Welcome to today's deep dive. I am so glad you're here because today we are talking about a feeling that honestly I think every single one of us knows all too well.
Oh, absolutely. It's almost a universal experience at this point.
Right. So you wake up feeling perfectly fine. You roll out of bed. Maybe you grab a cup of coffee just to get the gears turning, and you power through those first few hours of your morning.
You're ticking the boxes.
Exactly. You're clearing emails, you are totally on fire, and then seemingly out of nowhere, you hit a wall.
The dreaded 2 p.m. wall.
Yes, the massive midday crash. We are talking thick brain fog, heavy limbs, and just absolutely zero motivation to do anything other than like stare blankly at your computer screen.
Yeah, and the most frustrating part about that crash is that it feels like a betrayal. I mean, you haven't done any heavy physical
But
labor.
you've just been sitting at a desk.
Exactly. Yet your body is suddenly just refusing to cooperate.
It's maddening. But looking at the clinical data and the sources we have on fatigue today, there is a massive misconception that we really need to clear up right out of the gate.
Which is the idea of running on empty.
Yes. When that 2 p.m. wall hits, your immediate thought is, I have run out of energy. But the physiological reality is actually fundamentally different. You aren't lacking energy. You are struggling with highly unstable energy delivery.
That's such an important distinction to make. The potential energy is, it's often still sitting right there in your system.
But you can't access it.
Right. The cellular mechanisms required to unlock that energy and deliver it to your brain and your muscles have essentially just jammed up.
So that's our mission for this deep dive today. We are getting to the bottom of that exact cellular traffic jam. We're going to figure out exactly what is happening in your body at 2 p.m., why the instinctive things we do to try and fix it are making the biology significantly worse, and how shifting to a specific natural plant-based approach changes the entire equation.
And to get there, we really have to stop looking at this midday crash as some, random curse.
It's not just bad luck.
No, it's a highly predictable biological event. It feels sudden when it hits, but it's really the culmination of a chain reaction that usually starts the actual moment you wake up.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I tend to view my energy levels kind of like a smartphone battery.
Okay, I like that analogy.
Yeah, so I get furious when it's suddenly at like 2% in the afternoon, but I'm completely ignoring the fact that I've had 50 different apps running in the background, just quietly draining the system since 7 a.m.
That is a great starting point. But the clinical data points to something actually a bit more insidious than just background apps draining a battery.
Wait, worse than 50 apps?
Yeah, it's more like active metabolic sabotage.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So we all know the basics of a blood sugar crash, right? You eat a bagel or drink a sugary coffee, your insulin spikes, and then it drops.
The classic sugar rush.
Right. But what's less discussed in mainstream wellness is how processing those refined carbohydrates actually depletes your cellular reserves.
Wait, what do you mean? I thought eating the sugar is supposed to be the energy.
Well, it is, but to metabolize that sudden flood of glucose, your body actually has to burn through its own existing stores of magnesium and B vitamins.
Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah, so not only do you get that nasty insulin crash later, but you've actively starved your cells of the exact micronutrients they need to produce sustained energy for the rest of the day.
That's fascinating. So the energy I'm consuming is essentially stealing the raw materials my cells need to function.
Exactly. It's a net loss for the system. And then, add to that the chronic sleep debt that most people carry around.
Which is pretty much everyone.
Right, which prevents your brain from clearing out metabolic waste overnight. Then you layer on chronic stress, which keeps your cortisol artificially elevated all day.
And high cortisol is exhausting.
It demands constant glucose mobilization. It keeps you in this low-grade fight-or-flight state that just totally exhausts your adrenal system.
Oh, man.
And finally, dehydration. A mere 2% drop in total body water visibly impairs your mitochondrial function.
Okay, so let me get this straight. We have secondary nutrient depletion from breakfast, sleep debt, elevated cortisol, and mitochondrial dehydration all hitting at the exact same time.
It is a complete systemic bottleneck.
And when that bottleneck happens at 2 p.m., our first desperate instinct is to just force the system back online.
We reach for a stimulant.
Right, we grab the strongest coffee or energy drink we can find. And this is where the physiology gets really interesting, because the way we use stimulants is based on a massive biological myth.
The idea that caffeine gives you energy.
Exactly. We assume that consuming caffeine is the equivalent of putting fuel into the system, but it isn't. According to the sources, caffeine does not contain a single molecule of cellular energy.
Not one. What's fascinating here is that it just tricks the brain into not feeling the fatigue.
And understanding how it performs that trick changes everything.
It really does. So throughout the day, as your brain neurons fire, they produce this metabolic byproduct called adenosine.
Adenosine, okay.
Think of adenosine as a biological brake pedal. It binds to specific receptors in your brain, and as more of these receptors get filled up with adenosine, you feel an increasing pressure to sleep.
So it's your body's vital warning system basically telling you, hey, we need to repair.
Yes. And caffeine essentially sneaks in and blocks that warning system. It fits perfectly into those receptors, but it doesn't activate them. It just sits there, blocking the adenosine.
I always think of it like putting a piece of black electrical tape over the check engine light on your car's dashboard.
That is the perfect way to visualize it.
You slap the tape on, the glaring red light vanishes, and you think, great, the car is fixed. But you didn't actually put any oil in the engine. You just disabled the warning system while you continue to drive down the highway at 90 miles an hour.
Yeah, except it's actually much worse than just tape.
Wait, really?
Because the brain is highly adaptive. When it notices that you've blocked its adenosine receptors with caffeine, it doesn't just, give up.
What does it do?
It physically grows more adenosine receptors to ensure that the fatigue signal eventually gets through to you.
Oh, wow. So you are literally increasing your own physiological capacity to feel exhausted.
Precisely. That is the physical mechanism behind stimulant tolerance. Now you need 2 cups of coffee just to block the new, higher baseline of receptors.
That's terrifying.
And furthermore, because caffeine has a half-life of about 5 to 6 hours, that 2 p.m. coffee is still actively blocking receptors at 10 p.m. when you're trying to sleep.
Right, which ruins your deep sleep architecture.
Exactly, meaning you don't clear the adenosine overnight. So you wake up the next morning with the check engine light already on, requiring immediate caffeine just to reach a functional baseline.
It is a compounding physiological trap. Boost, crash, build more receptors, repeat. Okay, so if stimulants are just this neurological parlor trick that eventually breaks the whole system, actual sustainable fuel has to come from somewhere else. It means we have to stop aggressively stimulating the body and start actually supporting it.
And that is the core pivot in all the clinical literature we're looking at today.
Right.
True natural energy isn't this jittery feeling of being wired.
Right.
It's the byproduct of a fully supported cellular environment. It requires giving your mitochondria, the powerhouses of your cells, the exact biochemical substrates they need to manufacture ATP.
And ATP is the actual energy currency of the human body, right?
Exactly. Without ATP, nothing runs.
Now, here's where the conversation usually shifts to plant-based interventions. But I'm going to push back here a little bit because my skeptical side is definitely screaming right now.
Let's hear it.
I get that plants are healthy. I know I should eat my greens. But realistically, if I am physically dragging at 2 p.m., a salad is not going to wake me up. How does a botanical intervention actually cross over from just being healthy to providing a real physiological lift that can replace a strong cup of coffee?
It's a completely valid skepticism. And you're right, a standard side salad absolutely won't do it.
Glad we agree on that.
The difference really lies in nutrient density and bioavailability. To understand how a plant can actually compete with a synthetic stimulant, we have to look at the specific botanical highlighted in the source data, which is Moringa.
Right, Moringa.
It's a tree native to parts of Africa and Asia, and historically it's earned this moniker of the miracle tree.
Which, honestly, is a very heavy title to live up to. It sounds like marketing hype.
Oh, it totally does sound like hype until you put the leaves under a mass spectrometer and actually look at the biochemistry.
Okay, so what's in it?
What makes Moringa unique isn't some magical, undiscovered stimulant compound. It's the sheer massive concentration of the exact rate-limiting nutrients your mitochondria need to synthesize that ATP.
So it's feeding the engine directly.
Yes. Let's break down the mechanics. First, you have iron.
Right. But why not just take an iron pill if that's the issue? I mean, people take iron supplements all the time.
They do, but synthetic isolated iron is notoriously difficult for the human body to absorb, and it often causes severe gastric distress.
Oh, yeah, the stomach aches.
Right. Moringa provides non-heme iron complexed with naturally occurring vitamin C, which increases the absorption exponentially.
Okay, that makes sense.
And iron is the core atom in hemoglobin, the protein that carries oxygen in your red blood cells. If you have suboptimal iron, which a massive portion of the population does without even knowing it, your cells are basically operating in a low oxygen environment.
Wow.
You feel sluggish because your cells are literally suffocating.
So the bioavailable iron in moringa immediately improves oxygen transport to the brain and the muscles,
Exactly. It restores the oxygen supply. Next up, you have magnesium.
which we mentioned earlier getting depleted by sugar.
Right. Magnesium is a crucial cofactor. ATP, that energy currency we talked about, actually has to be bound to a magnesium ion in order to be biologically active.
Wait, really? So you can have an energy, but if you don't have magnesium, you can't use it?
Exactly. If you are deficient in magnesium, your body can produce ATP, but it can't utilize it effectively. Moringa is intensely magnesium dense, which directly resolves that specific bottleneck.
Okay, so it's unlocking the energy that's already there. But what about the actual production of the ATP itself?
That is where the B vitamin complex comes in. B vitamins are the literal chemical catalysts in the Krebs cycle. They spark the conversion of the food you eat into cellular energy.
Like spark plugs in an engine.
Exactly like spark plugs. Moringa supplies a broad spectrum of these metabolic sparks. And crucially, it pairs them with a massive payload of antioxidants.
Okay, I want to pause on antioxidants for a second because we hear that buzzword all the time in like skincare commercials and smoothie ads. But what do they actually have to do with my afternoon energy crash?
Basically everything. When your mitochondria burn fuel to create ATP, they generate exhaust.
Makes sense.
In the body, this exhaust takes the form of free radicals, which cause oxidative stress. If this cellular exhaust isn't cleared out immediately, it damages the mitochondria and severely slows down your energy production.
It clogs the system.
Yes, antioxidants are the chemical scavengers that neutralize this exhaust. By providing a high concentration of antioxidants, Moringa ensures your cellular engines can run continuously without choking on their own waste products.
So what does this all mean? When you laid out like that bioavailable iron for oxygen, magnesium to unlock ATP, B vitamins to spark the engine, and antioxidants to clear the exhaust, it completely reframes what fatigue actually is.
It really does shift the paradigm.
We treat exhaustion like it's a personality flaw or, a lack of willpower. But really, it's just a cluster of hidden micronutrient deficiencies. Our cells are starving for specific biochemical keys, and Moringa essentially acts as a botanical multi-tool that provides all of them at once.
That is the exact synthesis. Instead of taping over the warning light with caffeine, you are flooding the engine with high-grade oil, oxygen, and structural repairs all at the same time.
Okay, the cellular mechanics make total sense, but let's zoom out to the practical daily experience. If someone starts introducing these nutrients into their system, what are the actual mechanisms that stop that 2 p.m. crash from happening?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the clinical observations highlight 4 specific pillars of systemic change. The first is glycemic stabilization.
Meaning blood sugar.
Right. Because moringa leaves are incredibly rich in specific complex plant fibers and compounds like isothiocyanates, they drastically slow the absorption of glucose in the gut.
So it literally stops the insulin spike we talked about earlier.
Precisely. You don't get the massive insulin surge, which means you don't get the subsequent hypoglycemic crash. Your blood sugar remains a stable, flat line.
Wow. And that alone eliminates the most violent part of the afternoon slump.
It does. It keeps things steady.
Okay, so pillar 1, neutralizing the blood sugar roller coaster. What is the second pillar?
Systemic nutrient repletion. Because the density of the vitamins and minerals is so high, it acts as a corrective force over time.
So it's fixing the background issues?
Yes, it actively pulls you out of those hidden subclinical deficiencies in iron and magnesium. It isn't just maintaining your baseline, it is repairing months or even years of deficit.
And what about digestion? Because, you can eat all the nutrients in the world, but if your gut is a total mess from stress and poor diet, you aren't actually absorbing any of it, right?
That brings us exactly to the third pillar, gut microbiome support. This is where moringa differs significantly from just, taking a synthetic multivitamin pill. The specific prebiotic fibers in moringa don't just pass through you. They selectively feed the beneficial bacteria in your lower intestine.
Oh, so it's actively modulating the gut flora.
Yes, and those bacteria, in turn, produce short-chain fatty acids, which reduce systemic inflammation and support the gut-brain axis.
That's incredible.
It optimizes your digestive efficiency, ensuring that the energy you consume from all your meals is actually extracted and utilized by the body.
Which leads right into the fourth pillar, which has to be stress, right? You mentioned earlier how cortisol just drains the battery.
Yes, the final pillar is internal stress reduction. The specific antioxidants in moringa, particularly chlorogenic acid and quercetin, have been shown to actively lower the internal friction caused by physiological stress.
So it calms the system down.
It helps modulate blood pressure and reduce the cellular damage of elevated cortisol. It's essentially turning down the volume on that constant fight-or-flight alarm buzzing in the background.
Okay, I am totally with you on the science, but I have to play devil's advocate and bring us back to reality for a second here.
Go for it.
The biochemistry is flawless, but practically speaking, most people do not have a moringa tree growing in their backyard.
No, they certainly don't.
Right. So if consistency is the absolute key to repairing these cellular deficits, how on earth is someone supposed to reliably source, process, and eat fresh moringa leaves every single day while rushing out the door to commute to an office?
You've hit on the primary barrier to traditional botanical interventions: modern accessibility.
It's just not practical.
It isn't. Raw leaves degrade, they oxidize, and frankly, they aren't convenient. This is exactly why the focus has shifted toward advanced extraction and formulation within the supplement industry. You need a way to stabilize that biochemical profile without degrading all those active compounds we just talked about.
So how does the industry actually solve that? Because turning a fresh, vibrant leaf into something that sits on a shelf usually means destroying half the nutrient.
It requires cold processing and really careful sourcing. A prime example of how this is being applied effectively in the real world is a specific formulation mentioned in the sources called Moringa Magic.
Okay, Moringa Magic.
The goal of a product like this isn't just to, clumsily powder a leaf. It's to carefully extract and preserve the bioavailable iron, the magnesium, and those highly delicate antioxidants.
And keep them active.
Yes, and put them into a daily delivery system that requires absolutely zero preparation from the user.
So it's engineered specifically to bridge the gap between that deep traditional cellular support and the reality of a busy modern morning.
Exactly. It provides the complex nutritional profile we just dissected, but in a highly consistent, measured dose. In clinical nutrition, consistency beats intensity every single time.
I love that. It kind of reminds me of an investment strategy, actually.
Oh, how so?
Well, instead of taking out these high-interest payday loans on your energy using caffeine, where you have to pay it back with a massive crash later, Moringa Magic is like putting daily deposits into a savings account that yields compounding, long-term vitality.
That is a brilliant analogy. You cannot fix a chronic, years-long cellular deficit by eating a highly nutritious salad once a month. You have to patch the system every single day.
It's a completely different paradigm. We are so used to the instantaneous jolt. So if someone decides to make this shift, if they transition away from, say, 4 cups of coffee a day and start using a consistent botanical support system like Moringa Magic, what does that actually feel like? Because I imagine there has to be a transition period.
There is, and it's vital to manage expectations here. If you consume a high-quality moringa extract expecting your heart rate to spike and your pupils to dilate like you just drank a triple espresso, you will completely misunderstand the mechanism.
Right, because there's no synthetic stimulant blocking the adenosine receptors.
Exactly. The shift reported by users isn't a sudden, jittery high. It is a profound, gradual stabilization. The most common feedback is the sudden realization that it's 3 p.m., and they simply haven't thought about needing a nap.
The 2 p.m. wall just ceases to exist.
It just disappears. Over time, as those hidden nutrient deficits are repaired and the gut microbiome adapts, people naturally find themselves reaching for less caffeine.
But they don't even crave it.
Right. They might have 1 cup for the morning ritual or the taste, rather than relying on it for sheer survival.
They get their baseline back. It's the feeling of your body actually functioning the way it was originally designed to function before the sleep debt and the sugar crashes completely broke the delivery system.
It is the restoration of biological normalcy. The brain fog lifts, not because you've aggressively stimulated the brain, but because you've finally given it enough oxygen and stable glucose to operate clearly.
I want to ask you, the listener, to do a quick self-audit of your own daily routine right now. Just think about your typical morning. Do you absolutely require a massive dose of caffeine just to feel somewhat human?
A lot of people do.
Do you brace yourself for that inevitable heavy crash in the mid-afternoon? And maybe most tellingly, do you feel profoundly tired and sluggish even on a Sunday when you are supposedly just resting?
If those symptoms resonate with you, it's a very clear signal that your underlying metabolic engine is starving for raw materials, regardless of how many calories or stimulants you consume.
Right, and if that's the case, aggressive stimulation is just digging the hole deeper. Resetting your physiological baseline with a targeted, natural alternative might be exactly what your cells are begging for.
To synthesize everything we've explored today, the fundamental takeaway is that real sustainable energy is entirely a function of balance, not stimulation.
It's about support.
Exactly. Quick fixes like caffeine and refined sugar provide a short-term neurological illusion, but they absolutely guarantee long-term fatigue and structural burnout. True vitality comes from working with your body's inherent chemistry.
Supplying the iron, the magnesium, the B vitamins, and the antioxidants required to produce real, actual power.
Spot on.
Well, if you are exhausted by that constant cycle of spiking and crashing, and you want to look into how a stabilized botanical extract can fit into your actual busy life, the formulation we discussed as a prime example of this approach can be found at www.moringamagics.com. Again, that's www.moringamagics.com. It is incredibly fascinating to see how ancient botanical science is being optimized for modern physiology.
Breaking down the mechanics of fatigue like this raises an important question, something much larger, almost philosophical, about how we live today.
Oh, I love where this is going. What's the question?
Well, if you look at the structure of our modern society, our corporate demands, our endless deadlines, the sheer volume of output expected from a single person on a random Tuesday, it is essentially built on the silent assumption of artificial stimulated productivity.
That's so true. The system assumes you will constantly force your biological machine to run faster than its natural capacity.
We've completely normalized being constantly redlined.
We have. We just accept it.
But what would your life actually look like? What would your work look like if you operated purely on a fully nourished, natural biological baseline?
Wow.
With the way you engage with your family, or the depth of your focus, or even just your overall mood fundamentally change if you weren't spending massive amounts of subconscious mental energy just managing the exhausting gap between your next caffeine spike and your inevitable crash.
That is a brilliant point. We
Right.
spend so much of our day just trying not to crash. Imagine getting all that cognitive bandwidth back for actual creative thought. It is definitely something to sit with tomorrow morning, right before you reach to put that piece of black tape over your body's check engine light.